Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Sunday, the 25th day of August, 2024. And as always, we have a number of important stories that have come across the wire since we met early this morning and brought you the update of what happened early this morning in Israel and late last night here in the United States. All right, Netanyahu says that the preemptive strike that they did against Lebanon is not the end of the story. The Lebanese citizens are shaken by the Israeli strike. One said it felt like an apocalypse. The two U.S. aircraft carriers are going to remain in the Middle East. Citizens of northern Israel are fed up with their government for their non-action. And Hamas rejects the latest ceasefire offer and shoots a rocket into central Israel. So same old, same old. Here we go. Headline number one, Netanyahu's warning to Nasrallah and Khamenei. This is not the end of the story. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about Israel's preemptive strike in Lebanon before the cabinet meeting today. He said basically what happened today is not the end of the story. Hezbollah tried this morning to attack the state of Israel with rockets and UAVs. We ordered the IDF to carry out a powerful preventive attack to remove the threat, he said. The IDF destroyed thousands of short range rockets that were all meant to hit our citizens and forces in the Galilee. In addition, the IDF intercepted all of the UAVs that Hezbollah launched at a strategic target in central Israel. Netanyahu added, "We are striking Hezbollah with surprisingly crushing blows. 3 weeks ago, we eliminated its military chief, and today we foiled its attack plans. Nasrallah in Beirut and Khamenei in Tehran must know that this is another step to change the situation in the north and to bring our residents home safely. And I reiterate, this is not the end of the story." All right, well, we will see. Headline number two, the Lebanese citizens, they are very much, as you can imagine, shaken by the Israeli strike, at least the ones near the border. In the pre-dawn hours on Sunday, the Israeli Air Force launched a sweeping preemptive strike that sent 100 fighter jets soaring over southern Lebanon, obliterating thousands of Hezbollah launch sites. The operation, as expected, incited panic amongst the Lebanese. The residents of Zeb Quinn, a small village just 4 miles from the Israeli border, told Reuters he was awakened by the roar of the jets and the thunderous blasts that followed. It felt like the apocalypse, he said. Not everyone was perturbed. Now, this is interesting. Listen to this. On the shores of Tyre, which is further up north in Lebanon, all right, what do we see? They continued their seaside revelry, gazing at large mushroom clouds rising from one of the strikes. In other words, they're sitting on the beach looking at the clouds in the distance, going, wow, I guess a war is going on. So, again, it's only southern Lebanon that's getting it right now. So the beachgoers continued their seaside revelry. The IDF and reports from the Lebanese media outlets said most of the strikes in some 40 different locations in southern Lebanon were targeted mainly at open areas with only a few impacting targets within towns and villages, which is good. The open areas, obviously, where the tunnels are, where they had their rocket launchers. Many of the locations have endured more severe damage than the northern Israel communities over the past 11 months of conflict. The current escalation marks the most significant on the northern front to date, obviously, amplifying Lebanon's fears of a full-scale war with Israel, an ordeal that promises widespread destruction for a nation already teetering on the brink of economic collapse. So, this is the last thing they need, and yet here it is. Despite the preemptive assault, Hezbollah declared, here's the sad part, they're finished for today, but they promise this is just the first phase, keeping tensions high in both Israel and, of course, in Lebanon. The Lebanese prime minister convened an emergency ministerial meeting in Beirut and said he was engaged in efforts to halt escalations. Against the background of a summit convening in Sunday in Cairo, his name is Mikati, the prime minister, he said the answer lies in a ceasefire in Gaza. That'll do it. In other words, Nasrallah insists the sole action that will halt the attacks, as Nasrallah is the Hezbollah leader, is the ceasefire. And he said, first, the attacks in Gaza must stop and Resolution 1701 must be implemented. Lebanon supports international efforts that could bring about a Gaza ceasefire. Well, as we're going to see in our story number 5, there is not going to be a Gaza ceasefire. All right, but what else do we have? Well, the plot thickens. Headline number 3, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has ordered the presence of 2 aircraft carrier strikes in the Middle East. Pentagon said on Sunday, strengthening the U.S. military presence amid soaring regional tensions. The announcement made in a summary call between Austin and his Israeli counterpart represents a shift. The Pentagon had initially deployed the Abraham Lincoln Air Carrier Strike Group within the place to replace the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Group, but evidently the two aircraft strike groups are going to remain in the Middle East because they're worried something more will happen. Again, Iran has been strangely silent in all this. You've noticed we haven't heard anything from them, so it's like Hezbollah and Israel that are they're going at it. But the U.S. is still there wanting to deter, of course, some type of major fighting that would go on here. All right, now headline number 4: Israel must and can change the equation in the north. We have in this next headline. This is an opinion piece, and it's reflecting the frustration, the growing frustration, the continual frustration of people living in the north there. They're out of their houses. The school's about to start. The people are all over the country at hotels living with relatives because something like 60 to 80,000 of them can't go back home because of the continual bombardment. Here's what they say. Hezbollah violated the status quo in October when it opened fire, and now it must realize attacks on the northern border communities will meet the same response as attacks on Tel Aviv. And that's the key here. We'll get to that in a minute. The events of the past 24 hours mark only the beginning of an opportunity to take two critical actions. One ultimate goal, which is ensuring the safe return of the northern residents to their homes. The first necessary step is to update Israel's war objectives, which for the past 10 months have focused solely on Gaza, specifically dismantling Hamas's governing and military capabilities and securing the release of the hostages. The changing situation in the north must be acknowledged without compromising these goals. The number of troops currently in Gaza is the lowest since the war began, consisting mostly of a few regular units that should be redeployed to the north and replaced by reservists. The Israeli Air Force is certainly capable of handling the task in Gaza. Meanwhile, negotiations should continue until an agreement is reached without leaving northern residents in limbo. The second essential move is to demand Prime Minister Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant that they leverage the recent preemptive strike to make it clear to Hezbollah that the rules of engagement have changed. From now on, the security of Metula, Kiryat Shmona, they're the two towns on the border, must be regarded with the same seriousness as that of Tel Aviv. Hezbollah first violated the status quo on October 8th, and Israel has yet to make it clear that they must return to the pre-October 7th understanding or face unprecedented destruction in Lebanon. And this is what we've been talking about. For the last 10 months, Lebanon has basically, Hezbollah's been pounding the northern part of Israel, 6,700, 7,000 rockets, something like that, missiles, drones coming over. And all Israel has done is just responding like one for one, nothing really heavy. And the poor residents there just feel like you don't care. Why? Because they're not Tel Aviv. Remember when one rocket came near Tel Aviv from the Houthis, what happened? There's immediately a huge attack, a rocket attack of some 1,700 kilometers, missiles and an air force that flew to the area too from Israel to hit, the Houthis area there in Yemen, because Tel Aviv is Tel Aviv, and so the people up north feel like they're not concerned at all. In fact, it's embarrassing, they said, that what's gone on. They've called the Tel Aviv peace war is the preemptive strike. In other words, they did it preemptively so Tel Aviv wouldn't get bombed. The frustration is so intense. Now, get this, with the municipal leaders in the northern part of Israel. They've united, declaring from now on, we are ceasing all communication with the government until there is a complete and comprehensive solution for the residents and children of the northern border. Must include full security, the safe return of the residents, etc., etc. Why is their anger so justified? Well, here's what the article tells us. Because a few months ago in June and July, the IDF eliminated two senior Hezbollah commanders. The military accurately predicted Hezbollah's response: 200 rockets per incident fired at the north. Were there any warnings to Hezbollah back then? No. Any limited preemptive strikes? Absolutely not. Any powerful response to the rocket fire? They would have laughed. The disparity is not just evident, it's glaring. So in other words, just like in the South, they've had the same problem at the Gaza border for years. They would get these rockets come over, these mortars that hit the border there. They have like 10 seconds to find a shelter. And what Israel would do is send a few rockets over, always bomb some empty buildings, threaten, if you do this again, we're going to really get to you. And they did it again. The same thing happened over and over again. They really didn't do anything. And the same thing with the north, nothing, so to speak, because Tel Aviv is kind of it. You hit Tel Aviv, and the whole world's going to end. And that's why we talked about last night. If there was an attack on Tel Aviv, then look out that Israel would use its full force to go to the rockets that are set way back near Beirut, the ones that are the longer range rockets. But since it didn't hit Tel Aviv, the war keeps going on and a little tit for tat on the north and south. So anyway, they're rightly upset. We have friends that live in the area and have relatives in the area there, and they've been complaining from day one. Says the military wants to do something, but the political leaders will not, take the lead. It's terrible what we have to go through living in bomb shelters with their 80-year-old relatives, moving them when they get off a train quickly so they don't get bombed. And so it's a difficult situation. So anyway, let's see if something happens now based on what happened this morning in Israel. So headline number 5 now. Hamas fires rocket at central Israel, rejects ceasefire proposal. So what else is new? Hamas fired a rocket from Gaza targeting central Israel, landing in an open area and causing no damage or injury. Sirens blared in Rishon LeZion, south of Tel Aviv, in the late evening hours. Security authorities said the rocket landed outside the city. Earlier, the terror group said it rejects new Israeli conditions put forward in Gaza ceasefire talks, causing further doubt on the chances of a breakthrough in the latest U.S.-backed effort to end the 10-month-old war. Remember what we did on story number 2? The Lebanese prime minister said, now the answer is getting that ceasefire in Gaza. It will all be fine. Well, it's not going to happen. So what's going to happen next? Well, again, you've got the talks going on and on, nothing happening. Hamas is blaming Israel, so they backpedaled from a commitment to withdraw troops from the Philadelphia corridor, which they'd never had agreed to. Netanyahu made it very clear. And so the screening of displaced Palestinians, that's the second problem. You've got all these people in the south that want to move north, but you got terrorists within the group, and they don't want to have them, reload there in the north and form, battalions again to attack Israel. And so that hasn't been settled yet. So anyway, Hamas said they accepted a U.S. proposal to begin the talks on releasing Israeli hostages, including soldiers and men, 16 days after the first phase of an agreement aired at ending the Gaza war, a senior Hamas source told Reuters. But it said the latest proposal they've turned down. There was one they agreed to on July 2nd. And of course, the one they agreed to was with their own mediators, with Qatar and Egypt. Possibly the United States was involved in this, but certainly not Israel. So it's back to square one. So here we are. We're going to wait for the next shoe to drop between Israel and Hezbollah in the north. Hamas has made it clear that fighting will continue in the south. In other words, there'll be continual fighting on both the north and the south with no end in sight. And it's a very, very difficult situation, fulfilling sign number 7 of our 25 signs that we're near the end. The continual search for peace. Israel will continually search for peace and never have it. They'll be, attacked on all sides, continue to, until the second coming of Jesus Christ. It'll be a real sad situation. And it's going to get a lot worse, according to what the Bible tells us. So we're going to keep an eye on this. If anything, if another big, blasting breaks out, we'll let you know. The one yesterday, like we said, was terrible. When we had a TV station that had their cameras right there on the border. And oh, the sounds of the bombs, and that was, our house felt like it shook because of that, how it was heavy. So you can imagine the people living there. So we'll just pray for them. And again, as always, like we said, we'll keep you posted. Until then, as always, I'm Don Stewart, and thank you so much for watching, and may the Lord richly, richly bless.